The vicar opened the cabin door and welcomed Billy G onto the boat. "I've never been great with poetry before," she said. "Am I wrong? Or was that a little bit risque? Perhaps I should get you to help me with my lyrics." She went down below into the cabin. "Hey, is someone getting married?" She laughed as she saw all the decorations inside. "I hope you haven't laid all this on just for me. I'll be needing to spread a few cigarette stubs and crisp packets around the place to create a bit of working-class club chic. This could ruin a carefully crafted reputation." I could feel myself going red in the face. "Punk was worried that you would not be willing to eat at a table that had not been laid for a princess, complete with silver cutlery and candles," the vicar answered. "Please don't disillusion him and tell him that you expected chicken McNuggets in a bag." Ciabatta and jam is more my style. Ciabatta because it's like a little ponce, and jam to keep it real. She smiled and looked around at me. "How chuffed is he or what?" "No, the boy's done good, as we meant to say up north. Very many thanks. I'm sure you will get your reward in heaven, if not sooner, on the arms of several beautiful ladies, if you know what I mean. It looks like we have everything we need for a riotous party," she continued, "so long as there is some beer available." The vicar cast me an anxious glance. He only drinks champagne, sparkling water and beerless beer, alcohol-free, at parties, and certainly would not have had the foresight to buy some cans of John Smith's. Fortunately, I had, although I'd been hoping to drink it myself, and I produced a cluster of cans with the necessary flourish. "Is there somewhere on this boat where I can have a leak?" Billy G went on. "I was stuck in that car for so long, I was afraid that I was going to pee into my knickers. Or in your G-string," is obviously the slick, smooth answer I should have given. God, it's so easy to think of these things months later. But at the time, I was goose-bumping uncontrollably, I blame it on the hormones, and was unable to do anything more than grunt unintelligibly as I showed her down the steps into the back cabin. Oh, I've told you about the magnetic qualities of the bedroom, haven't I? The first thing she did as she entered the cabin, even before she had a leak, was to fling herself onto the bed. "How fantastic is this?" she laughed. "All those naughty rumours about the state of this boat. But hey, it's really quite together." God, life can be a bitch, can't it? If you were told, a spotty teenage punk Sanderson, that one day he would be in a bedroom with Billy G bouncing up and down on the bed, he would have died and gone to heaven. But here I was, in exactly that situation, and it was more like hell than heaven. He was the vicar's bed on the vicar's boat, and the same goddamn vicar was about to turf me out onto the street. Where was I when all the luck was handed out? As of yet, I hadn't said a word to her. I was racing some simple phrases such as, "Who told you about the boat?" or "What did they say?" or the obligatory, "I suppose oral sex is out of the question," when the vicar called down to say that he'd heard a second car drawing up on the gravel. Time to jump up and do my Angel of Mercy bit for Breamore before he ended up in the Thames. So, that was the end of my one and only bedroom scene with Billy G, snuffed out before I even had the chance to get going. Story of my life. If you're expecting romance, punksters, you're in the wrong place. So, Breamore's arrival. He had parked his suitably expensive Rolls Royce next to Billy G's car. Certainly travelled in style, although I was relieved to see that there was no sign of a chauffeur. Seeing the difference in the cars made me wonder if there wasn't something in what Sean Fitzpatrick had said with his theory about managers and record labels getting rich while musicians never made any money. I remember reading about Gilbert O'Sullivan, I think it was, who used to live in a caravan at the bottom of his manager's garden while he was writing all of those #1 songs. I mean, but am I mad, or is there something wrong with this picture? Either way, Breamore was certainly not afraid to splash it about. He obviously had plenty of the folder stuff left after buying the car, as he was dressed in full dinner suit, complete with a dicky bow and white scarf. He also had one of those flashy belts trying to hold his stomach in check, a moribund or whatever it's called. And I bet that the rocks on his fingers were worth a bob or two as well. It made Billy G look very underdressed. He'd already got out of the car and was looking at Billy G's as I walked towards him. "I see that we have some other guests. Who is there?" he asked. "Just you and Billy G," I replied, guiding him along the pontoon. I could tell by the look on his face that she was the last person he was expecting. Now, I don't know if you know that scene at the end of the musical Oliver when all the wooden walkways start sinking into the mud in the Thames as Victorian coppers chase Scrooge and all his army of pickpockets along the back of the buildings. But walking along that pontoon always reminded me of it. Squelch, glorious squelch. I think the rebel in me quite fancied seeing a bit of the Thames mud on Breamore's jacket and patent leather shoes. He placed every foot really carefully, as if picking his way through a field of cowpats, and of course, the rebel in me was disappointed, as he arrived quite safely on the deck to be greeted by the vicar. "Come below and get warm, Richard. I have just opened a bottle of champagne, unless you prefer to join Billy G with a glass of beer. I'm not sure that I'm in much of a party mood." He pulled the vicar to one side, but not far enough away that I couldn't hear. "I hope you know what you're doing, David. I got some fool's message about Gooder Walker, which clearly does not concern you. Whatever you want to discuss,
Let's do it quickly and privately, with just the two of us. Certainly not in front of Billy G. And then I must be off. I was going to the opera, and I don't want to miss the whole thing. And I thought you had dressed up on my behalf, the vicar said, addressing a larger audience and pushing Breamore down into the boat. I cannot guarantee that I will let you escape so lightly. As you can see, we have gone to a lot of trouble. Punk will be most disappointed if you don't sample all the food he has prepared. And I'm sure there is nothing that you can say to me that you cannot say in front of the beautiful Billy G. He acted as if he was introducing them to one another. You have met, I suppose. You do manage her, after all. It's her royalties that help to pay for that magnificent Rolls Royce. I can see that you're in one of your light-hearted moods, but I'm afraid I am not. Perhaps we should meet later tonight. He pulled the vicar aside again. This is not something to discuss in front of women. Ah, yes, I remember your views on women, the vicar went on. Not exactly very new man. Employ them if they have large bosoms, make money from them if they can sing, sleep with them if they will have you, lie to them whenever necessary, and never treat them as an equal. Have I left something out? He smiled as he looked at Breamore straight in the eye. If this was the style of conversation to expect, then I can see why the vicar felt that my presence might be undesirable. Not now, Breamore said, again whispering loudly through his teeth. No, it must be now, the vicar said equally firmly, leaving Breamore in no doubt that he was still holding the whip hand. He then put the big grin back on his face. Perhaps, Punk, you can get a drink for us before you leave. Billy G, I trust that we have not been deserting you. The vicar and Breamore went over to join her at the saloon. Hi, Richard. Have you had your hair cut or your ears lowered? I heard her say. You look depressed. I heard on the radio driving here that the Japanese have discovered that clenching your buttocks 100 times a day is an excellent cure for depression. And you have such fine buttocks. Come on, let's try. She held her arms up and began to close her buttocks in a sort of comic dance, somewhere between suggestive pelvic thrusts and someone struggling with constipation. The vicar was in for an exciting evening. The combination of his two guests seemed fairly explosive. They'd all moved down at the saloon, leaving me standing alone on the galley. The vicar looked up at me. Am I right that you have other plans for this evening? I'm sure we can cope if you need to leave us. I signalled to leave. I'm flattered to say that Billy G was good enough to say, aren't you staying? I'd assumed that you'd be eating with us. But I was in no doubt that Breamore, for one, was pleased to see the back of me. Before going, I asked the vicar if I could borrow his big boating jacket. It was waterproof and lined with the wool of about 12 sheep. Just the thing for a cold April evening. He handed it to me with a simple, don't get too cold, and I clambered off the boat. That boy's not good. He's got ears the size of diamonds, broken nose and a twisted face, with a voice that I moved slightly closer to the porthole and could hear the vicar continuing. I was, in fact, so far beneath her that her mother felt I needed a stepladder just to kiss her beloved daughter's buttocks. I mean, I'd heard that joke before, but it was always well received. Whatever they are saying, it is all completely untrue, of course. I couldn't possibly have done it. I spent the entire day stuck in my bedroom trying to remove a penile wart.